They burned it all. Every scroll, every secret, every answer to questions we're still asking today. The Library of Alexandria didn't just hold books. It held the future we could have had. Right now, you're living in a world that lost something it can never get back. And most people don't even know what was taken from them. We're talking about the single most important building in human history. A place where the greatest minds gathered, where impossible questions got answered, and where humanity reached heights we're still trying to understand. This is the story of what we lost. And why it still matters. Here's what nobody tells you about the Library of Alexandria. It wasn't just a library. That word doesn't even come close to what this place actually was. When you hear library, you probably think of a quiet building with some old books and a mean librarian telling you to be quiet. But Alexandria? This was something completely different. This was the world's first research institution. The first university. The first place where knowledge itself became the mission. And here's the thing that keeps historians up at night. We know it existed. We know it was massive. We know the greatest minds of the ancient world worked there. But almost nothing survived. It's like someone took the internet, every search engine, every database, every piece of information humanity had collected, and just deleted it. Gone. And we're left trying to piece together what was there from fragments and second-hand accounts. Let's go back to where it all started. The year is 305 BC. Alexander the Great is dead. His empire, the largest the world had ever seen, is being carved up by his generals. One of them, a guy named Ptolemy, gets Egypt. Smart move. Egypt was rich, stable, and had 3,000 years of civilization backing it up. But Ptolemy wanted more than just another kingdom. He wanted to build something that would outlast him. Something that would make his dynasty immortal. So he founded a city. Alexandria? Named after his former boss, obviously. But Ptolemy had a vision that went beyond just building another capital. He wanted to create the intellectual center of the world. A place that would attract every scholar, every scientist, every philosopher. A magnet for knowledge itself. And he did something radical. He built the Mouseion. The Temple of the Muses. We get the word museum from this, but again, that doesn't capture what it really was. The Mouseion was part university, part research center, part think tank. Scholars lived there. They got paid by the state to do nothing but study and think and write. No taxes. Free food. Free housing. All you had to do was push the boundaries of human knowledge. That was your job. Attached to the Mouseion was the library. And this is where things get insane. Ptolemy and his successors became obsessed with collecting every piece of written knowledge in the world. Not just Greek texts. Everything. Egyptian hieroglyphs. Babylonian astronomy. Persian medicine. Indian mathematics. Hebrew scriptures. If it was written down, they wanted it. They set up a system. Every ship that came into Alexandria's harbor had to surrender its books. Scribes would copy them, and sometimes they'd keep the originals and give back the copies. They sent agents across the known world buying manuscripts. They even borrowed the official state copies of the great Greek plays from Athens, left a massive deposit, then kept the originals and sent back copies. Athens was furious. Alexandria didn't care. At its peak, estimates suggest the library held anywhere from 400,000 to 700,000 scrolls. Now, one scroll isn't one book. Some works took up dozens of scrolls. But we're still talking about more knowledge concentrated in one place than anywhere else in human history. Until the printing press. Until computers. The building itself was massive. We don't have exact descriptions because, well, everything burned. But we know it had lecture halls, laboratories, dining areas, gardens, and storage rooms stretching in every direction. The scrolls were organized by subject. Literature. Mathematics. Astronomy. Medicine. Philosophy. Geography. Each section had its own librarians. Its own system. And the people who worked there? These weren't just librarians stamping books. These were the top minds of the ancient world. Euclid wrote his Elements there. The geometry book that's been used for 2,000 years. Archimedes studied there. The guy who figured out pi and built war machines that could flip ships out of the water. Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth using nothing but shadows and geometry, and he got it right to within 2%. In 200 BC, Hipparchus created the first star catalogue. He mapped over 800 stars and figured out that the Earth wobbles on its axis. Herophilus dissected human bodies and discovered that the brain, not the heart, controls the body. That was revolutionary. For thousands of years after him, people went back to thinking the heart was in charge because his work was lost.
Hero of Alexandria invented the first steam engine, not a theory, an actual working steam engine, 1700 years before the Industrial Revolution. He also created automatic doors, a windmill, and a vending machine. All of this knowledge was sitting there in the library. The scholars didn't just collect information, they organized it. They created the first bibliographic system. Callimachus made a catalog called the Pinakes, 120 volumes listing every work in the library, organized by author and subject. It was the world's first search engine, and it's gone. We have fragments of fragments describing what was in it. Here's what gets me. The Library of Alexandria proved something that we're still trying to prove today. That when you bring smart people together, give them resources, let them collaborate across disciplines, and remove the pressure to produce immediate results, they do impossible things. They changed how we understand the universe. They laid the foundation for modern science, mathematics, medicine, and engineering. The Ptolemies understood something most rulers don't. Knowledge is power, yes, but more than that, knowledge is what separates civilizations that thrive from civilizations that collapse. They made Alexandria the most important city in the Mediterranean for 600 years. Scholars traveled months just to spend time in that library. There was a Google headquarters, MIT, and the Library of Congress all rolled into one. But here's where it gets complicated. The library didn't have one catastrophic ending. It died slowly, death by 1,000 cuts. And this is where historians argue constantly because the sources are messy and contradictory. The first major blow probably came in 48 BCE. Julius Caesar is in Alexandria, caught up in Egyptian politics. He's backing Cleopatra in a civil war against her brother. Caesar sets fire to the Egyptian fleet in the harbor to prevent it from being used against him. The fire spreads. Some ancient sources say it reached the library, or at least part of the book collection stored near the docks. How much was lost? Nobody knows. Some say a few warehouses of scrolls. Others say it wasn't the main library at all. But the library survived that. Mark Antony allegedly gave Cleopatra 200,000 scrolls from Pergamum to replace what was lost. The institution kept going. The real decline started later. As Rome took over Egypt, funding dried up. Scholars stopped getting their salaries. The Mouseion became less of a research center and more of a school. The focus shifted from discovering new knowledge to just preserving what was already there. And preservation cost money. Money Rome wasn't interested in spending. In 272 CE, Emperor Aurelian fought a war in Alexandria. A huge chunk of the city, including the area where the main library stood, was destroyed. Many historians think this was the real end of the Great Library. Not a dramatic burning, but a casualty of war. Buildings destroyed, scrolls scattered or used for kindling, scholars fled. What remained moved to a smaller library in the Serapeum, a temple complex. That survived for another century. But in 391 CE, the Christian Roman Emperor Theodosius ordered the destruction of pagan temples. The Serapeum was torn down. If there were still scrolls there, they went with it. By the time the Arabs conquered Egypt in the 7th century, there was nothing left to burn, despite the legend that Caliph Omar burned the library. That's a myth invented centuries later. There was no library left by then. So what did we lose? We lost the complete works of hundreds of ancient authors we only know by name. We have 7 of Sophocles' plays. He wrote over 120. We have a handful of Sappho's poems. She wrote volumes. Every medical text by Herophilus, gone. Most of Aristotle's writings, gone. The detailed accounts of Alexander's campaigns written by people who were actually there, gone. We lost scientific knowledge that took centuries to rediscover. We lost mathematical proofs. We lost star charts. We lost maps showing coastlines and trade routes. We lost entire libraries worth of Egyptian and Mesopotamian texts that we'll never translate because we only have Greek references to them. But here's what really haunts historians. We don't know what we don't know. There could have been theories about evolution, germs, atomic structure, gravity. There could have been novels and poems and plays that would rival anything we have now. There could have been historical accounts that would completely change how we understand the ancient world. And we'll never know because it's gone. The Library of Alexandria represents the greatest loss of knowledge in human history, not just because of what burned, but because of what it means. It means we're still catching up. It means the Dark Ages were partly dark because the lights went out in Alexandria. It means that progress isn't inevitable. You can go backwards. You can lose everything. But there's another side to this. The library also represents something hopeful. It proves that humans have always been driven to know more, to collect, to organize, to understand. The scholars at Alexandria weren't doing it for money or fame. Most of them died unknown. They did it because knowledge matters, because understanding the world is what makes us human. Today, we're trying to build digital versions of Alexandria, Wikipedia, the Internet Archive, Google Books, projects to digitize every text, every manuscript, every piece of human knowledge and make it accessible to everyone. We're trying to make sure that what happened to Alexandria never happens again. That no fire, no war, no zealot can erase what we know. But we should remember the lesson. Knowledge is fragile. It has to be protected, funded, valued. The moment a society stops caring about knowledge, stops supporting the people who create it and preserve it, that society is on borrowed time. The Library of Alexandria stood for 600 years as a beacon of human achievement. It died not in one dramatic moment, but through neglect, through war, through the slow realization that the people in power didn't see the point anymore. They had more immediate concerns, more practical matters, and humanity spent the next 1,000 years trying to remember what was lost. If this made you think differently about what we've lost, subscribe so you don't miss what else the ancient world can teach us.